Now, this is part two, exposing the tactics of Illuminati. And as I was talking about the schools, how in most of these schools, because you can see right now, a lot of people say, oh, racism isn't still going on. There is underlying racism still going on. It is being used through demonic power. And it's very subtle. It's not overt like it used to be. You don't have people calling you names in the classroom, but there's something that's very evil and very hidden that I've seen. And so while we were in school, like I was talking about, my son was at a school. They had him in this atmosphere where the children were so controlled they couldn't even talk, especially even at lunchtime. Or my son would always get in trouble if he would, run around or act, do horseplay. But his Caucasian friend, they didn't say anything to him. And I witnessed this myself. And so I would start speaking up about certain things that was going on, and then my son would start having problems. He would start having headaches. He would come home talking about illnesses, and he came home one time and told me one of the teachers told him, don't cough in class. You're supposed to cough at home, and making certain remarks like that to a child who was only in kindergarten. Who does that? And so I would always have to complain about the school, and the Lord would show me certain things that there was things going on. I mean, people get mad when we talk about that there's racism going on, but there was something going on. There was an agenda. And this was more than just racism. There was an agenda to destroy the black race, to destroy poor people. They weren't just targeting black people, they were targeting poor people, mostly people who are of low income. And that's what they were doing at the school. And he was showing me it was happening in other places, because as we moved around to other schools, it was happening all over. And my son started complaining that he was having headaches. And I would ask him, when you're having headaches? And I started getting the dates and times. He would always have headaches when he go into a specific teacher's room. He'd be okay to go into a specific classroom with a specific teacher, and then all of a sudden he'd start having these headaches, and it was happening every day. And so I started praying, because the Lord was telling me to pray. So, they're attacking his frontal lobe. And so my son started changing. They had diagnosed him with ADHD, which is something he did not have before. He started having problems with his concentration. He could not focus. He had a hard time concentrating. They would say, oh, now he's problematic because he was disrupting the class. But he didn't have any concentration problems, so he started having these headaches every day. And I was asking God, what's going on? And so my son, whenever he was in class, he could not focus. He could not concentrate. He would have difficulty learning and comprehending. He would continue getting up. The teachers were reporting, oh, he's getting up all the time. He's disruptive. They kept all of a sudden making complaints, trying to make him seem like a problematic child. And that's another thing they do. They target certain children, make them seem like, oh, they have behavioral issues. And before, my son was a well-mannered young man. He like I said, he was a little goofy. He did a little horseplay, but other than that, he was well-mannered, respectful. He listened and followed the rules. And so it got to the point where I didn't know what to do. So I started asking God what's going on, and he would have me pray for my son. He would have me pray for him. And he was showing me certain things. And so my son started complaining about certain friends turning on him and teasing him and picking him and bullying him. And these were kids who he before had no issues with. They got along well. Kids he used to talk to every day. My son was very outgoing. He easily made friends. And then all of a sudden, after, I started complaining about certain things, I would notice that he would start coming home saying, oh, well, I don't have any friends. So-and-so did this. And then he would make all the kids mess with me. And I was like, well, was the teacher there? Did you tell the teacher? He says, yeah, they didn't do anything. They didn't say anything. And so then this became a pattern where the teachers would pretend that my son was problematic. But whenever a student was bothering my son, they wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't do anything. And so I would have to keep going back and forth to school. So the Lord started showing me that the teachers were actually causing this to happen. And see, this is a lot of things that's going on where you can see some children who are being targeted, they're being bullied, and they end up, taking their own lives because the parents have dealt with children being bullied in these schools and nothing happened. And then all of a sudden it's like the kids are getting teased and the teachers don't do anything, and they're wondering, oh, why is nothing being done? That's because these people are on an agenda for Satan. They're being controlled and influenced by him, and they're setting this up to happen. A lot of times when I would complain about a certain kid bothering my son, and I would have to go back and make repeated reports to the principals and the teachers before anything was done. Then when something was done, that child would stop. Then all of a sudden another child, a different child would start bothering my son. And then the Lord would show me that this is stuff that they're doing. They're setting it up. They're controlling the minds of these kids. I'm going to tell you, one time I drove up to the school to drop my kid off, and I saw a principal go out there. And she stood out there waiting for all the kids as they were getting off the school bus. And she was looking over them, waving at them, and standing over, and the Lord was showing me, watch her. She's loosing stuff over the children's brains to control their behavior. And he was showing me then that a lot of them didn't know how to deal with certain children, especially children who, our children, children who are free and they might have behavioral problems or just a little difficult. Every child is different. Some kids, they need different type of discipline. So he was telling me that they're loosing sorcery on the kids to control their minds and to control their brains, because that's just how I don't know, that's how they dealt with them. And so when my son was having these headaches and losing all his concentration and focus, and then kids started bullying him, and then my daughter started getting teased because she started getting picked on too all of a sudden. I said, I'm going to homeschool my kids. So I took my kids out of school and I homeschooled them for a period. I homeschooled them for about a year. And when I got my kids home, I was shocked when I finally homeschooled them, because it's like my son started comprehending. My kids were learning. It's like he didn't have any of the concentration problems that they said he had when he was in school. I gave him hands-on learning things. I picked up things from Lakeshore Learning. I had all these different manipulatives and hands-on things, and I was pulling up websites to teach my kids, and we were getting all these different things. We went through a curriculum from Sunlight, and I was teaching them Christian-based homeschooling things, so they were learning. And I saw that my son was smart. I'm like, wait a minute, this is completely in contrast to what they're telling me in school. And I realized the problem was when he's in school. When he's in school, they're loosing attacks at him to cause him to be distracted, to cause him to lose his focus and his concentration. That's why he was having all these headaches. And they're doing this to a lot of our children. Certain children, they don't want to thrive. And they're targeting not only just poor black children from black low socioeconomic demographic, but they're targeting a lot of God's children. They're targeting a lot of Christian children. The Lord was showing me this. And it's like, I started praying. And I was telling other parents to just pray with me. And I would try to talk to them about spiritual warfare and around the apartment, and no one would listen to me. They thought I was insane, and they didn't really understand what I was talking about. No one understood about witchcraft, because a lot of churches did not talk about this. And that's another thing we're going to get to, why churches don't talk about this. And so I was fighting this battle by myself. My kids were getting sick. A lot of things were happening, and we had to literally go from school to school. I was going from school to school because my kids kept having problems. And I ended up taking them back to school because my son, he wanted to go back to school. He's a very social kid, and he wanted to be around other children. All he wanted to do was go to school and learn, but they impacted and he impeded him from learning by attacking him. The teachers were attacking him in the classrooms, messing with his brain, causing him to have these headaches, causing him to have these concentration problems, having other children pitted up against him and mistreating him and bullying him. These things were happening all the time. Then my daughter started getting sick. She didn't have any problems at first, but she ended up telling me things that were happening with my son, and then they started targeting her. So I remember one time she came home adamantly telling me to bring her a box of cheese crackers to school, because she loved to eat cheese crackers, and they were having them at snack time. And so in my spirit, I felt like, no, I don't want to bring those snacks to school. I said, why do you need me to bring the whole bag? I can just I said, I'm not going to bring the whole box, because I was putting her cheese crackers in an individual bag and sending them every day. I says, I don't need it. But she says, my teacher wants you to bring the whole box to school. And I says, no. And so she kept on coming home, telling me what her teacher says, So I said, you know what? I went against my own wisdom and discretion. And I said, okay, I'll take this box of crackers to school. I went out and bought a brand new box of Cheez-It crackers. They were not open. I sent them to the school so the teacher could give them to her every day. A couple of days later, probably about a few days after eating the crackers, my daughter came home and she said her stomach was hurting. And she kept on having stomach aches. She started vomiting, and she couldn't stop. She was having stomach aches. We took her back and forth to the doctor. Nobody could say anything. They didn't know what was wrong. They couldn't find anything. I would get calls while she was in school to come pick her up, because she's in a nurse's office, because she started vomiting. This went on for a long time. I didn't know what was happening, why my daughter had these stomach aches, why she kept vomiting. And we were at the Mayfield Heights School District at this time, and it's like, my daughter kept vomiting. And then I said, what's going on? I had forgot all about the Cheez-It crackers. I wasn't thinking anything about it. So I ended up taking my kid out of that school. I withdrew her and homeschooled him again. That was the second time I homeschooled, because my son was having problems with his head hurting, and he was having headaches. My daughter was vomiting, and we didn't know what was going on, but those stomach aches lasted her for years. And the Lord finally, the Holy Spirit revealed to me and showed me that it was the crackers, the Cheez-It crackers that I didn't want to send to the school, that they wanted me to keep in the classroom. She did something. He said she loosed something over those crackers, and that's what caused my daughter to have those stomach aches. And this is what's going on. They're attacking our children. They were retaliating against me because I was praying for God's people to be out of bondage. I was praying for the children in the schools to be out of bondage. I was praying for the families. I was praying over the minds of the children, over the minds of the parents. I was praying over the people in the apartment buildings. God had me praying over the entire city, and they were retaliating against my children by making them ill. And this is stuff that they do, despicable things to children.